Okay. Welcome back, everybody, to the Beyond Reach podcast. Today we have Jay Drury. I'm really stoked for him to be here. Jay, how you doing
I'm
today?
Doing awesome. Just got off work at the grill.
Yeah?
Hanging out, had an awesome day.
Did you finish, the what's it called? You closed?
We closed. We did the dishes. We had a blast.
Oh, gosh. So I kind of wanted to get started. I want to hear your story, man. I kind of want to hear what's going on in your life.
Yeah, so I guess my story really starts when I was about 5. Well, actually, it starts when I was like 0. And I got adopted from China. And so that was really cool.
Really?
And so then, my parents went over to China and adopted me. And they brought me back to California. And so living in California was awesome. We lived about 20 minutes from LA, if that. And so we got to drive around the heart of LA a lot. And so that was pretty cool. And then we moved to Virginia for 11 years. And that's where I really started to take my faith seriously. That's where I got a call to ministry. Because in Virginia, I went to NTS here on SWU campus when I was 12 through 17. So I went for a minute. And so I felt a call to ministry there. And then I went to Indiana Wesleyan for a year. Then I came back happily. And so now I'm here and just having a blast.
You enjoying it? You love SWU?
I love it. It took about a month, I think, to really get in.
Yeah.
And then it was like a flip of the switch, and I'm just having a blast now with it.
Yeah. So you were at SWU before, then you went to Indiana Wesleyan.
I was. So I was a big nerd in high school. So I loved school. I still do. So during high school, I was like, I'm bored. Let's take some classes at SWU for fun. And so I just did a little bit of dual enrollment for a couple of years, and I had a great time with those.
And did you enjoy Indiana Wesleyan?
Yes, I enjoyed parts of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know long distance was kind of hard.
Long distance ain't it, man. not the move.
Not the move.
Being back closer to home has been an absolute blast.
So kind of going into that, transitioning into that, a lot of what you spoke about was intimacy, especially with other people and with God. So I kind of wanted to what prompted you to speak about that?
Honestly, the verse that I used on my sermon was the verse that caused me to switch from Indiana to SWU.
Really?
And so I remember the exact night that I was reading my Bible, and that verse kind of just jumped out at me. And I'd read it before. I've probably read it a dozen times before, but just kind of gleamed over it. And it jumped out at me, and I told my roommate, I was like, dude, check out this verse. This verse is insane. And so that was probably the first time in my life that a specific passage of scripture actually blew up on me.
Yeah.
And I read it probably every day for months.
Wow.
And so I was like, what does this even mean? I was perplexed by the idea of our love abounding more and more with knowledge and insight. And so that's really what prompted me for the sermon, because it's something that I've been thinking about for months, honestly.
Right. What was the verse?
It's Philippians 1:9, and it says, my prayer for you is that your love would abound more and more with full knowledge and depth of insight. It's insane.
That's really cool.
It blows my mind.
I loved your, so I wasn't there in person. Unfortunately, I'm sorry. I'm kind of fake.
It's all good.
But I rewatched it, and I saw the bonfire thing, and I was a Boy Scout for a little bit. I've never heard of that, but I thought that was kind of cool.
Oh, thanks.
And I thought that was a good analogy for it. I don't know, I kind of got off topic, but that was kind of cool.
Thanks, man.
So, kind of going from that, the intimacy triangle. What made you want to kind of bring that up and?
Honestly, I didn't even think about it until I knew I was writing the sermon. And so the verse perplexed me, like I was saying, but I didn't understand how they all worked together.
Yeah.
And so I happened to be in a class that talked about your love being a rightly ordered love, is how they would say it, where it's knowledge and love work together for something better than themselves. And so when I was thinking about my time in that class, and when I was thinking about this sermon, honestly, it kind of felt together. I wrote the sermon before I had my illustration to open it up. And so I was sitting there thinking, I have no idea how I'm going to open the sermon up. My first idea was, I'm going to talk about statistics on how we have an intimacy problem, because that really was where I wanted to get.
Yeah.
And during the sermon prep, it just jumped at me. I heard it from somewhere I'm not sure I remember where I heard the concept of the fire triangle, but then I read the scripture and I was like, wait, there's 3 ideas that Paul seems to be praying for, and there's 3 sides to a triangle. Let's make those together. And so I did, and it worked out.
Yeah.
It worked out.
Yeah. For yourself, kind of get a little personal, what has been your struggles, your personal struggles when it comes to intimacy? Is that with God, or would you say it has been other people?
I think it's with both. So I think it seemed to be a disconnect between my love for God and my love for people, and my knowledge of God and my knowledge of people. And so like I said earlier, I love school. At Indiana Wesleyan, I got to take the classes of my dreams, which sounds strange, but like I dreamed of taking these classes for years. And I got there and I didn't like them. I felt like it was pointless for some reason. So I felt like I was accruing all this knowledge, but that it wasn't doing anything for me.
Yeah.
But hindering my relationship with God and making me unable to make relationships with people. And so when this first jumped out at me at IWU, I was like, okay, then how can my knowledge of people and God encourage an intimacy with them?
Yeah.
And it ended up being switching schools. It ended up being not studying as much. It's kind of funny. I had one of my professors who I really admired, and she taught me Greek. And she looked at me and said, Jay, you study too much. And I was like, what? And she goes, stop studying so much. She's like, stop studying for my class so much. And I was like, what is going on here? And she goes, see that PhD right there? And I was like, yeah. She goes, it's rubbish. It's garbage. I was like, what do you mean? And she goes, it's garbage compared to the surpassing knowledge of loving God well.
Wow.
That I was speechless. I was like, you just called, 7 years of your life garbage. And she's like, no, she told me, she was like, I can learn as much from a professor in seminary as I can from an 80-year-old woman who's never graduated from high school. And it's because of their love. And I thought to myself, I want to be that. I don't want to accrue knowledge for knowledge's sake. I want to accrue knowledge for love's sake.
Yeah.
And so then when I kind of let that go, let the whole grades thing go, because grades aren't that important, right? That really helped. That for real helped.
That's good. Thanks, what kind of steps do you think you took, other than like coming from Indiana Wesleyan and back to SWU, what kind of steps do you think you took to kind of get to that point of where you feel comfortable with your intimacy with people and with God?
I think one of the larger ones was just being okay with sitting next to him, whether that be sitting next to God or sitting next to people. I was always like, my love language is quality time, whether it's with my friends or with my girlfriend or with my family. And so my logic was, okay, then quality time is this awesome conversation all the time and always doing cool stuff, when it could just be cooking burgers together at the grill and not saying anything.
Right.
And if that's the case for my friends, what if that's the case in my relationship with the Lord, where I don't have to be talking to him and putting in all this effort, but just sitting next to him?
Yeah.
I think I heard someone say that the word devotion is the mixture of two words, to sit beside and to do it well. I was like, wait, really? And am I doing that? Because I don't know if I was.
Gosh.
And so that was probably the largest one. The second thing that I did try to work on my intimacy and let go of this whole knowledge thing was, this sounds strange, and I'm not gonna say this, that everyone should do this, but I started studying less. I started skimming my textbooks. Some exams I haven't studied for. And the reality is it was out of honestly an idolization of grades and knowledge that I've decided to let go of those and to be okay with taking a worse grade if that means hanging out with my friends at night and building that intimacy with community.
That's good. Would you say you kind of feel a little, that could potentially build burnout by doing all that schoolwork?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, it did. Yeah, like when I was at IWU, there were days where I couldn't even write a paper, which was strange. Because I can normally write papers fairly all right. But I think I did completely hit burnout, and that drained me. It was bad. It was bad.
Going back to that first step that you talked about, was just being with God. That's something I've also been working on, is just having time alone with God and just sitting there and just kind of thinking in your head, not necessarily talking, but just kind of listening.
Yeah.
Which is it can happen, which is a lot of thinking and consciousness, is just you just sitting there, being in the presence and just chilling.
Right.
That's all. That's what come and go communion was for me today. I came in, I sat down, and I was just like, what do you need to tell me right now? And I kind of checked my heart. I checked my priorities and my passions, and it was good.
Dude, that's awesome.
I was good.
Awesome. I love how you said you checked your heart, because that's something I mentioned in my message. And that was convicting for me, was that I wasn't checking my heart before I was going to the presence of the Lord, and I think that could have been hindering His, honestly, willingness to reveal Himself to me.
Yeah.
And you doing that before at Come and Go Communion, that's awesome.
It was great.
Dude.
So going back, this is kind of a technical thing. So I wasn't like I said, I wasn't there. I had to rewatch online, and for some reason, I couldn't hear what your mom was saying because she wasn't mic'd up. So just if you could like reinterpret like what she said, or kind of just like give me like a long story short, or just word for word what she said, I'd appreciate it.
So I think what she was talking about was, so we did communion, so we received communion together. And so we asked to do that because of the content of the message being about intimacy. And so what my mom walked up there and said was pretty much, hey, we're about to receive communion together out of a love for God and a love for each other.
Yeah.
And she talked about how this was like a love feast. They called it in the New Testament, where people would just sit together in gladness together and eat.
Yeah.
They would be good at sitting together. And so she did that, and then she invoked the elements. And so she blessed them, and she really just asked the Lord to, in a supernatural way, to meet us where we were, and to help us work on our loves, our intimacies, and then to also come aware with the knowledge of the love that God has for us and that we can have for each other. Gosh, it was fun. It was cool having my mom do it. Honestly,
Man, I missed that.
That was awesome.
I'm really upset I missed that.
It was fun. It was a lot of fun.
So to kind of close out, do you have any sort of like words of wisdom or advice for people that are kind of listening, just to kind of give them some clarity or peace of mind?
I think one thing that I think I may have mentioned this in my message, I kind of forget, but something that I've been trying to work on is, picking one side of the triangle to work on. And so for me, for the past few months, it has been the intimacy part, the foundation of it. And maybe that might be reading less books about God. That might even be reading less of the Bible, which sounds bad to say, but just sitting with God and falling in love with him again, and then opening up his word to see what he has to say to me.
Wow.
But then for other people, maybe you're awesome at loving God. I know some people, and I mentioned this, who are so good at loving God. I'm totally jealous of it. And they show that through how they love people. And my challenge to them is maybe open up a book about God. Maybe learn the finer points of theology or all of these things that we can know about God, and see how the knowledge of God could influence their love of God.
Yeah.
And for the other people who might have those two areas right, work on the depth of insight part. Maybe you have the knowledge, maybe you have the love. Now put it into action. Work on using your loves and using your knowledges. That's not a word, but using those to influence how you behave, and to influence the decisions you make, whether they're large or small.
Wow. That's amazing.
Thanks, man. I hope that's helpful.
I love it.
Thank you. Oh, it's fun. It's fun. That Jonathan Edwards quote that I pulled out, well, it was like, true religion is driven by holy affections.
Yeah.
That one kind of caught me off guard when I read it, because like Jonathan Edwards is known as this guy who, one of his, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that his famous sermon is the sinners in the hand of an angry God. And it's like this very intense call to holiness sermon, it seems like. And yet he's like, man, I just want to love God. Like our religion should be driven by our love for God.
Yeah.
And it seems like if it's not, we get called out for it. Maybe rightfully so.
Yeah.
When people are like, hey, you're trying to preach this love for God and love for people, but are you doing that? And that seems to be the first thing that people will point out. It's like, man, I want to get that love part right. I'm working on it. Not sure how I'm doing, but I'm working on it.
I love it. Well, Jay, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you coming and spreading your wisdom for everyone to hear. Tune in next week. We're going to be having Gabby Kidder. She'll be here and spreading whatever she talked about. So thank you guys so much. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Peace out.